Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Well, as you guys can see, I finally got the Tamiya Top Force EVO all finished. Now, a few weeks ago I did an unboxing of this, so if you're interested in that, you can check that video out. It shows you all what comes inside this kit, but I think this thing turned out beautiful. I always wanted one of these really high-end, more competitive class Tamiya builds. I had the original Astute back 30 plus years ago, but this one's even higher quality than that one. And when I saw this one, and the price was really good, I had to get my hands on it. I think it turned out wonderful. As I mentioned in the unboxing, this does come with a pre-painted body, which is very unique for Tamiya. But it makes it a little easier on the build because you know the paint job's gonna be perfect. Just gotta get the decals put on right, which I think I did a wonderful job. I'm not always the greatest with the decals. This one I think turned out really, really well on this guy. Now, I did go brushless on this, as I mentioned in the unboxing video. Well, this is a cheap brushless kit in this. And I went with inexpensive electronic parts because you don't need the highest quality if you're just going to make it sort of a backyard basher, which this will be, though I don't know how much bashing I'll do because I love this. I want to keep it in really good condition just because it looks so awesome. So let's go ahead and get the body off and see underneath the hood and show you guys that electronics and how I mounted everything. So let's go ahead and just take it. The body clips off. There's just two body clips you guys can see here. One in the front that goes this way, and then one that goes lengthwise of the body in the back. And now this is Velcro. My Astute had that as well. And this helps to keep the dust and dirt and stuff out when you're driving it, so it keeps your electronics in the interior of your car in a little bit more clean condition. So I'm not the greatest with cable management, so this isn't going to be like the cleanest build in terms of the cables, but I can do some more adjustments to that. This is sort of how I have it right now. So you can see I've got two of these WL Toys 2200 milliamp hour packs in here. I'm going to try to find a larger stick pack. There's some that are made that will fit in this without having to move these posts. But these will be just fine for now. So they do give you the ability to put Velcro straps like I did because of these slots that they built in to the carbon fiber body, so someone has some forward thought to actually include that. And I've got them run in parallel. I have this little connector here that allows you to run it two packs, double the capacity, but you're not doubling the voltage because we wouldn't want to run this on 4S. In fact, that little ESC won't be able to handle it. Speaking of the ESC, this is 120 amp. I'm using the air quotes because there's no way it's really 120 amp. One of these little off-brand ESCs from eBay. They sell these, I've seen them in 60 and 80. It may be 60, maybe 45. There's no way that this thing is 120 amp. But it'll have no problems running a 2S LiPo. So you have the ESC I have mounted here with double-sided tape. And then you have your 3900 kV, this black motor. This came $39.99 off eBay for the combo. That's a great price, and as long as it works well, which so far it has, I love these kits. There's no reason to spend hundreds of dollars on these ESCs, Hobby Wing and Castle Creations. Yes, they're great, don't get me wrong. But if you're just gonna bash around, these little cheap kits sometimes are just fine. You don't need to spend a ton of money. Just like on the radios, the Dunbar C will do just fine. You don't need to buy a Spectrum or a Futaba. Yes, they're better, but they're not worth it in my opinion if you're just gonna drive this thing around in your yard and if you're gonna go competition, absolutely. So let's take a look at that. Speaking of the radio, I got the Dunbar seat. It is the X6F receiver mounted in here. And I just used one of my existing controllers. I have 3 of these. So you can just spend under 20 bucks. I think this was $18. Get one of these, press the button on the side, put it into binding mode, bind it up. And if you've got several of these controllers, even if you have just one, if you have a bunch of receivers, you may just have to make a slight tweak to servo reversing, or you might have to, you're gonna have to definitely adjust the steering trim and possibly the throttle trim a little bit for each car, but that only takes a moment and it saves you a lot of money. And I went with just a little like $8 servo off of eBay. It's a metal geared one. It's fine. It might be a little noisy, but it's just fine for what I'm doing. Again, I don't need to spend a ton of money on a servo. If you're going to race at your local hobby shop against other people on a track, yeah, you want to get a high end and maybe a brushless servo, something that's going to have super quick reaction time. And with just being these small wheels and tires, you don't need a super high torque one. This is just a standard. I don't know what it is. I put a higher torque one in my Blitzer Beetle back here because it has a little bit bigger wheels, and that's a better servo. But I think this will be just fine. And if it goes bad, it's not going to cost me much to get even a little better one. You can get a $20 one that'll be better than this, like the one I used in the Blitzer Beetle, and it's not going to break the bank. And you can get all this stuff on Amazon or eBay or your local hobby shop. It's just going to cost you more. And the hobby shops don't have as big a selection, but they're always going to have the best quality stuff. That's not, I don't think we can debate that. So yeah, I think it really turned out great. Now you can do some upgrades to this. I've seen people put aluminum A-arms and aluminum inside the nut that goes inside the wheel here. There's a lot of metal parts out there available, but they're not that easy to find. They're sort of custom made, and there's some people out there that do make them, but it's not super easy to find. But I think this is just fine. Again, I'd rather have aluminum arms, but I think these would be just fine. You could get aluminum turnbuckles. I know that, you know, the knuckles inside of here, inside the wheel, you could get these in aluminum as well. And of course, the dog bones here are metal, and they're nice in this car. I wouldn't replace the shocks. I've seen people do that. These are already metal shocks. These are like the high-end premium Tamiya shocks. You typically just get plastic ones with almost all their kits, and I think these are just great. I mean, look at that. Super soft. They dampen really well. I've got these spacers. They give these spacers in here that you just clip in, but they have these ones they include, they don't really mention, but you have to put a screw through them that are more like your other shocks you'd see from other companies, where you can adjust it by loosening the screw and adjust it where you want it, tighten it up. You don't have to fiddle around with a bunch of different spacers. I did just use the spacer ones here on the rear shocks, but I kind of got it the way I think I'd like to have it, and I think it looks really good. And now, when I was building these shocks, I built like the two rear ones. There's a little white spacer that goes into the bottom of the shock, and then an O-ring, one of these rubber, like dark orange, red O-rings, the rubber ones they give you. And that goes up, and then you screw it together. And that little white piece, I had these put together, and then when I was putting the shocks onto the car, you always put a metal washer, and then the screw goes through the bottom into the A-arm. And what I did is I just looking at the I wasn't paying close attention, and the instruction manual, this little white spacer that goes in the shock, which I already used 2 of them, they only give you 4, looks the same size. It's obviously much thicker than the washer, and I wasn't paying close attention, and I used a white washer, which was dumb, behind this, and I tightened them down, and I knew that wasn't right because I built many of these cars. I just wasn't myself that day, and it deformed them, it squashed them. It didn't bust them, but it deformed the plastic. So when I was trying to build the front shocks, when I caught the mistake, put the metal washers on, took those, since they were deformed, when they put them up in there with the one O-ring, the piston deal there in the shock didn't want to move well. And then most of all, you couldn't get it tightened all the way. You pushed down in there, it didn't fit together right. And then of course the oil would leak out of it if you don't get that all the way tightened. So I was sort of upset at myself, of course, by doing that in the build. And then you end up with oil leaking, so I have to figure out a solution. Well, I know from the past building these plastic shocks in the Blitzer Beetle and the Sand Viper, and of course I got a Durga down the floor that's in pieces, and many others I built over the years. They usually just use 2 of those rubber O-rings in the bottom, and that's what I did, because thankfully they give you plenty of spare parts with these builds on the small items that are easy to lose and are inexpensive. So I just put 2 of them in the bottom of the shocks for the front, which were the ones that don't have the white spacers, because I had deformed those, and it works just fine. You put 2 of them in there, so instead of a white spacer and a rubber O-ring, you get 2 O-rings in there, and then it tightened up perfectly. I have no oil leaking, and the front shocks look perfect. So if you happen to have that problem like me, you can do that. So there were just 2 minor things I did wrong in the build, and that was one of them. And thankfully, a little ingenuity on my part and some past experience with the other shocks, I knew that 2 O-rings would probably be fine in there, and that's what I did. The other thing was, when you're building this, you know, you have the drive shaft here between the rear and the front gearbox. There's a center gear that goes this way, and it helps to, you know, bring the, when you're bringing the from the rear box to the front and get all them both gearboxes running, this gear here attaches to the front gearbox. And what I'm getting at is, when you build that thing, there's a metal nut in there. I don't know what else you call it. It's not really a nut, but it goes in there and it's threaded so that allows that gear to turn one direction. And the instruction manual shows you how to put it in. And of course, I just grabbed it. It fits right in there, but it has to go one way. You can't flip it in this way and go, you have to go this way, but it'll go either way. Of course, I put it in backwards. So when I was looking at it, I'm like, what's going on? Whenever I give it throttle, only the rear wheels would turn, the fronts would just vibrate and barely move. When I put it in reverse, they'd all go. That's because I had it backwards. When you flip it around the correct way, if you're using the one-way gear, which I'm talking about here, then the front wheels would, and the rear wheels all go full throttle. Then you brake or let up, the rear wheels will stop and the front will keep spinning freely as if there's nothing attached to them. That's how the one-way gear is supposed to work. And I use that because there's not a lot of information out there, but it's supposed to help with handling, steering a little bit. I thought it would just be better. But they do give you a pre-molded one-piece gear you can put in there instead. So they have you build both, and then you decide which one you want to use. And thankfully, it's easy to pull it out. If you wanted to switch because the conditions you were driving in were better just to use the solid one, you just take these 3 screws out here, pull it up, you take it out, put the other one, make sure you put a little grease on it, put the 3 screws back in, and you're ready to go. So I took it out, realized what I did, I reversed it around, and it's good to go. And now the wheels all function as they're supposed to. And again, you can put that solid pre-molded one piece in there, and you don't have to worry about building it. But it's a really simple thing to build. So let's go ahead and let's fire it up, and I'll show you guys how those wheels actually work. I've got the little on and off switch here on the side, and then you'll hear the motor play the music. There's the starting up. And we got the steering here. See, it's a little bit noisy. It seems good. You can get, I've seen aluminum for the bell crank deal, they call it, whatever it is here. I might be using the exact terminology right for your steering. And that was obviously better than the plastic, because these are the parts that could bust in a really hard crash. And aluminum might bend a little, but aluminum's not going to snap off. And let's go ahead and show you that. You give it some throttle. And then when I brake, watch. There's your front wheels spinning freely still. That's how that one-way center gear is supposed to function. Let's go ahead and turn it off so we're not talking over that. All right, guys, I really like how this turned out. Again, I think it's a beautiful build. I really excited to get my hands on this. And I want to get it outside now and just do a little test drive. It's probably not, I'm probably not going to take it out in the mud and dirt. I want to keep this thing clean for now. I had a ton of rain recently, in fact today, and I don't want to get this thing caked with mud. I'd rather do that with some of my more backyard ready to run bashers like the Maximus or something than to take this beautiful build out in the mud. But I'll probably drive it in the street. Now, of course, these tires, you drive them a lot, they're going to get worn down pretty quick, and then that'll be tires. But driving a little bit on the street's not going to hurt them too much. I don't know if I'll put a GPS reader on. If I think of it, I may, just to get an idea what kind of top speed we get with this particular setup. But I'm just going to drive it around, so it'll probably just be me now. As I mentioned in the unboxing, this would be my daughter Katie's car. But as with kids, they're unpredictable. She didn't help me much with this, and she's lost interest. So, hey, I'll take it. But if I can get her outside to drive it, I may have her drive this, and I'll drive the Blitzer Beetle. Of course, I always get nervous. She's a really good driver, but you always worry about bashing it into the mailbox and breaking something. Thankfully, with the internet, parts for these cars shouldn't be impossible to find, as when 30 years ago, you go to your hobby shop and you could find, this is pre-Traxxas day, so before Traxxas, you could find your Losi, your Team Associated and stuff. But trying to find parts for Tamiya, you Tower Hobbies maybe, otherwise you were sort of out of luck for trying to contact Tamiya directly. So anyway, I could get parts for this. I just, I always am paranoid about busting them. That's what these are, they're meant to be run hard. And things are going to break, but I still don't like to do it. So I don't know. If she goes out with me, I will have her drive this since it's supposed to be her car, and I'll drive the Blitzer Beetle, but otherwise I'll just drive this one by myself outside and let you guys get me impressions on what this car looks like. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get outside now for that drive review, guys, and thanks for watching. All right, guys, let's get the Top Force EVO out here and do a little test run, and I'm gonna do a top speed test with it as well. My daughter's not with me. It's like pulling teeth to get her to come outside and actually drive the cars. I'll get her to one of these days. She's so involved with her games on her laptop. But anyway, I'm excited enough to drive it myself, so that'll be good enough. So take it out here. I just want to, it's really muddy in the back. We had a ton of rain yesterday. I don't want to get this beautiful car all disgusting. So I'm going to be keeping it mostly in the road. I might take it in the grass to see how the power is. Oh, this grass, I need to mow it again today. It's really tall. So anyway, I just want to take it out here and kind of get an idea how it runs, make sure everything sounds right. I've not really run it more than just a few feet around inside my house. And we'll get a top speed. I want to see what kind of top speed we get. So if you were to buy this and you put a similar system or the same one in, what kind of top speed would you get with a 3900 kV brushless motor on 2S LiPo? So let's just take it out here and drive it around and see. These Milan GPS readers can be a bit flaky, so we need to get a pretty good run back and forth here for a while to really get a true top speed. A lot of times they'll read really low. It takes them a while to gather enough data and satellite data. So let's put it down here and see how it goes. Well, that's pretty quick. Again, this is four-wheel drive, guys, so it's going to be maybe not necessarily as quick as a two-wheel drive. I'm babying it a bit here. I don't want to hurt my brand new car. Yeah, that's pretty quick for 2S. Wow, that's better than I was anticipating, honestly, and just eyeballing it here. I gotta think that's somewhere in the 30-mile-per-hour range, maybe 35. I don't know, we'll see once we get the GPS reader data here. Whoa! And these tires, of course, are meant to be driven in the dirt. There's that sounded like I don't know if that was that counter gear doing that. You kind of hear it make a little sound. Almost reminds me of whenever you have a slipper clutch. That should be enough speed runs here to get a top speed. Let's bring it up here and see what it says. This is saying only 23 miles an hour. We'll drive it some more. That seems a little low to me, but then again, it can be tricky. These things can seem faster than what they are. Usually, sometimes I get that too, and it could be something to do with my radio system here. I'll get, just want to kick forward or reverse, and I've got it neutral. So it'll sometimes do that. Let me see if I can reset the, you don't have to, but I'll try to reset it. There we go. Let's run it out here again. And see, sometimes it takes a little longer, and the second time you get a little better speed, but that's still not too bad. I mean, this is only 2S. Just seemed like it was a little quicker than that to me. Yeah, it definitely slides around when I brake. I'm braking easy on it because I don't want to, it slides on this pavement. Kind of let it coast a little bit. It is really windy today, guys, so I got my back to the wind right now because I know how bad that is, the wind noise in the mic. Even with a dead cat attachment, you can only do so much. Ooh, see, I don't want to hit that. That's one thing, whenever you brake, the car lose traction on you. You don't have any control. I don't want to slam into that car. That's how you end up breaking something. And that fishtails around like that. And honestly, this is plenty fast enough for me. So if it is just 23, Oh well. Let's see what we got that time. Oh, that time, that's much better. That's what I thought. We got 35. That's what I thought. See, it takes these Mylons a while. So if you're running one of these guys and you get a low speed reading, keep going. Even though it has satellite lock, it just takes it a little longer to gather enough satellite, information as it's tracking your movement and then calculating, because these GPS are going to be off by a little bit, and then it has to get enough information to actually get a good reading. That looks right. 35 miles. That's what I said. 30, 35. I didn't think it was 23, but hey, that's why you do these and you keep running. If you have a better GPS reader, you probably get a faster reading. But with these Mylons, you've got to be patient with them. And I've taken it in my car, in my van, and drove down the highway out here, and it was spot on with my speedometer in the car. So I know these are accurate. They just take a while. Keep that in mind whenever you're using one of these. The reason why many of us have them, I know Robbie over at Bang for Your Buck RC's got one. They're inexpensive. So I've kind of bottomed out in the grass now. This grass is just too tall. So you can see when I let off on the gas, the front wheels keep spinning. That's that center gear. But I want to be careful with this guy. I mean, I love this car. I don't want to strip out gears or ruin something, so I'm not going to mess with trying to go 3S on this. But a 2S, is just fine for one of these. Got a phone call coming in here. Thankfully, gears and parts now are so much easier to find. If you did strip something, it's not going to be too expensive. You're going to be able to find those replacement parts on the internet compared to years ago. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, it's so much harder. The free internet days, getting parts for these, especially the Tamiyas, which were not as common in your hobby shops, was wow. You were really worried about ruining your Tamiya back then, because trying to find the parts to it was an adventure. Had to find someone who had a distribution network to Tamiya, or message to me, try to call them directly and get a spare part. So yeah, the grass is gonna be, this is a really low centered car, very little clearance, of course, so it's not going to handle this grass, which I just mowed like 5 days ago. Now whenever I give it throttle here, let's see, there's a bit of cogging there. It's not nearly as noticeable as it was on my Sand Viper, and that was a different one of those Ghoul RCs. It's not as bad every time. Sometimes it's quicker. I think it probably depends on the position of the motor. But again, this is just a cheap sensorless kit, so that's going to happen. And again, this is not competitive, meant for competition. If I were going to drive this around for competition, you'd want a sensored brushless kit so that you can get that really quick off the gun start. Sensorless like this are why they're cheaper. They're fine for just bashing around like this, but just being careful. I don't want to get this brand new car hit by a real car. But yeah, it seems to be just fine, and it is quick. That's really quick on 3900, because I didn't really expect it to get that good of a speed on 2S. My Durga, I had a 4300 kV on it. Probably, ooh, that sounded a little goofy. I think that's that center gear, that one-way center gear. I hope so. I never had one of those before, so I'm not super familiar. But on my Durga, I had a 4300 kV on 2 and 3S, and on 3S I was probably, I didn't have a GPS reader then, but it was easily in the 45 to 50 mile per hour. But I kind of messed something up. I got to fix that. I've never gotten around to it. It's got the gears, something stripped, eaten. It was just too much heat. Pretty sure the Durga's got dual ball diffs in it as well, and it uses a belt drive between the front and the back, as opposed to this aluminum. I don't know if it's aluminum. That could be stainless steel. That the antenna shaped drive shaft, that I say antenna, it kind of reminds you of Some of them you would see almost look like they just took a metal antenna off some of the other kits and stuck it in there. That's what it looks like, but it works just fine. But yeah, the Durga, I messed something up in one of the gearboxes. It was just too much at 3S on that kit. And that was years ago. I've just never gotten around to fixing it. I need to. It was just laziness on my part. But we know we can get parts for it, so I just need to figure out what's messed up in the gearbox on that guy. And I'm pretty sure that the Durga's gearbox is just in the front, I believe, has got some gear that's probably meshed. It's got some teeth stripped off it or something. And I can see at this speed, I just feel like you go any more on this, I feel like you're going to probably damage something, because you got to remember, even though this car is slightly upgraded from the original, and we still got 35 miles an hour, guys. This is still was designed for a brushed motor. It comes with a 540 Mabuchi brushed motor. It was not designed with brushless speed. So yeah, there was some brushed motors you could put in here. I always put a sport tune, or I'd always get a higher end brushed motor years ago, and certainly could get one that could go this speed, especially, you know, a lot of times you had to go 7-cell, which wouldn't really fit in this car, but you could, it could definitely do this speed. But this would be at the upper limits, in my opinion, of what this car would be designed for. See there, and there we go. I may have bumped the throttle there, but it does occasionally kind of glitch and want to go forward or back. It's just something probably with the cheap ESC or something. So, all right, guys, like I said, I'm happy with this. I think this thing looks beautiful, so I'm going to baby it, and it looks pretty darn clean. There's a little bit of dirt on the side here, but everything looks pretty much as it was before I took it out, and that's what I wanted. So yeah, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. You know, click that bell. That way you're notified every time I upload new videos. And I'll have some more Tamiya eventually coming on the channel. I'm sure. I love building these kits, and I've been trying to feature more and more of them. So if you like what you see, please consider doing those two things. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.
The power of the dark side.